On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we're diving into the Oklahoma City Thunder earning a season sweep of the Cleveland Cavaliers. What went right for OKC? Chet Holmgren, Cason Wallace, SGA, and the rest of this Thunder roster was thriving, but Josh Giddey got benched down the stretch. We'll talk about it all coming up on today's Locked On Thunder podcast.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com, Rylan Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Every single morning, we're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. You can join the Locked On Thunder Insiders Club with subtext.com/LockedOnThunder. On today's show, brought to you by Jase Medical, we're diving into the Thunder sweeping the Cleveland Cavaliers this season. Chet Holmgren, he's a problem, folks. SGA returns to form. The Thunder did a great job defending Donovan Mitchell, and Josh Giddey was benched down the stretch. Today's show, again, is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when purchasing a Jase case, providing you with the personal supply of 5 antibiotics to treat 50-plus infections. Get yourself today a Jase case at jasemedical.com. That's JASC medical.com. So in this game, the Thunder turn around. They play the Cavaliers again. And so, of course, interconference matchup, only going to play them twice. They've already went to Cleveland. They won that game in Cleveland with a 10-point comeback in under 2 minutes. And in OKC, they were able to beat Cleveland as well. In this game, felt a little different than, of course, the one in Cleveland, because in Cleveland, the Cavs didn't have Allen or Garland. They could get both of them back. And so these two teams were fairly healthy. The only players that were missing, and no offense to Ty Jerome or Amani Bates or whatever, but the only two players that were missing was Isaac Okoro for the Cavs and Kenny Hustle for the Thunder, both important rotational players. But all in all, in the grand scheme of the NBA, when you're going to have guys on the report most nights, this was a pretty healthy night for each team. So Lou Dort was listed as questionable. He ended up playing. He didn't feel great at shoot-around in the morning. Then he worked out pregame with David Daigneault, and he felt ready to go. And so they played him, and he played really well. This was the last game of this homestand for the Thunder, and they got the season series sweep over Cleveland 2-0. And so they picked up another big win over a Cleveland team that's going to be pretty good in the Eastern Conference, of course. So, like I said, they're pretty healthy. So the starters were awesome. It was SGA, Giddey, Dort, J-Dub, Chet. And then for Cleveland, it was Garland, Mitchell, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. You know, you'd change Strus, I bet, for Okoro whenever he's healthy. But nonetheless, when you look at this Thunder team, it's impressive that we're going to start with Chet Holmgren on a night where SGA dropped 43 points. But Chet Holmgren is an absolute problem. He hit a big 3 to start the game. It was the second bucket of the night. And then after that bucket, we saw a constant pattern of what we've seen all year long of teams defending Chet Holmgren, where they are just going out on hard closeouts and being super aggressive, running him off the line. And the thing is, while Allen was super aggressive, Chet Holmgren made him pay for that the entire night. Chet Holmgren could just swim past him for an easy layup. Chet Holmgren could take Jared Allen off the bounce and just embarrass him. I mean, he just absolutely embarrassed Jared Allen. There's no way for Jared Allen to defend him out there on the perimeter. It resulted in Jared Allen getting brought into the lane, and then Chet hits this Dirk fade where he somehow just cashes it in while he stumbled a little bit in the post. Chet Holmgren was just incredible. And the thing about Chet Holmgren is it ties back into our preseason assessment of this team. There is not a great way to defend this team. There has not been a book out yet on how to defend the Thunder. And I was a bit surprised that the Cavs didn't do what I imagined that they would and have Allen stay in the paint and kind of protect the rim more, have Mobley on Chet, and then you just kind of live with Josh Giddey out there. They didn't do that a ton in this game. They used Allen on Chet and played it more traditional, more straight up. And it did not work. It did not work at all. And so you saw Chet Holmgren, again, able to beat Allen off the dribble multiple times. And so as he's beating Allen off the dribble, and Allen is becoming a liability on that end of the floor, his teammates are shading over to help Allen on the drive off the dribble from Chet. But Chet is such a good playmaker that he just dishes it out to the wide open corner shooters. And that's going to work more often than not as you see this Thunder roster take form. And you see that, unlike in years past, and by years past, like the last decade and a half, unlike then, there are lineups where you can get multiple shooters to where if you do try to shade over to somebody, the Thunder are going to have the ability to make you pay for it. And so Chet Holmgren's ability to play make as a passer, to score off the dribble, and to cash in threes on the catch and shoot, it just puts you in such an off-balance situation defensively that I don't know how you defend it. I don't know how you defend SGA. This team, whenever it is playing its identity, this team is a really tough guard for anyone in the league. And we spend so much time worrying and obsessing about Chet Holmgren can't defend Joel Embiid. Chet Holmgren can't defend Nikola Jokic. And that's true. Nobody can in the league, though. There's also a lot of guys 8 games into his career that can't defend him. And so it's a trade-off. Yes, he can't defend Embiid. Yes, he can't defend Jokic. It's going to happen against those matchups. Giannis, whoever. But there's also going to be many matchups night in and night out because not every team has a Jokic. Not every team has an Embiid. So many nights there's going to be matchups like a Jared Allen who's just going to get cooked on the defensive end because he cannot go out to the perimeter with Chet Holmgren. And if you try to send a smaller guy out there to keep up with him off the bounce, well, he can just shoot over the top of you at 7-1. So Chet was just awesome tonight. And I think that one of his biggest attributes and one of his biggest traits tonight was something that the Thunder didn't necessarily highlight a ton, was his ability that we've been pointing out all season long to find space and to find the soft spot of the defense on these rolls and whenever he's screening and rolling, and whenever he's just relocating because he's trying to get out of the way of the driver. Eventually, these guards and these ball handlers are good enough that eventually, as you see that more on film, as you kind of see his tendencies of how your teammate's going to play these situations, eventually, I promise you, these teammates are going to hit Chet in those scenarios. Then his shot volume, his shot attempts are going to rise, which people are clamoring for on Twitter. That's going to rise and take care of itself as you continue to see on film the playmakers kind of what he likes to do. And then defensively, you just cannot talk enough about how good he is defensively. His ability to detour shots and block shots in the half court is awesome. He is the reason why that NBA 2K has the pogo stick badge, because his second jump is just insane. He had a play where he forces a Mitchell drive comes in and he deters that shot at the rim. There's no shot Mitchell can score over the outstretched arms of Chet. And I thought live that he might have gotten a piece of the ball. I don't think he did looking at the replay, but he had a great contest of a Mitchell drive. And then Mobley gets the rebound and he just is able to shift back over to Mobley and block his shot and meet him at the rim. So he's able to leap up, contest Mitchell, get back to Mobley and block the shot. Now, the block kind of ricocheted to the Cavs and they still scored that possession, but that sequence is kind of how good he is as a shot blocker, and you can see it in transition. It is incredibly hard to get transition blocks, especially whenever you're in that one-on-one scenario or from behind, and Chet is able to do both of those things. And the thing about Chet is, yes, he's compromised defensively against Embiid and Jokic, so is everyone. But there's no hunting him out or getting switches that are advantageous to you, because you saw where a play that the Cavs had where they got the ball to Max Strus, who was wide open in the corner, and you're going to want to take away a corner three from Max Strus. So Chet closes out extremely hard and flies by Strus. Strus beats him off the dribble, of course, because of the hard closeout. But not only is Chet able to recover and get back to kind of cut off Max Strus. Max Strus then is of course going baseline. He dumps it off to Evan Mobley, who's at the restricted area, dumps it off to him. So you're going from defending the baseline and kind of showing your body toward the basket to then flipping yourself to the opposing basket towards the restricted area, of course, and still getting the stop and still getting the block of Evan Mobley. After Evan Mobley high points the pass from Strus, comes back down to the floor, and that was the mistake to give Chet enough time to just flip and contest Evan Mobley and block the shot. And Evan did this little spinning hook shot thing, that push shot thing that just didn't work. But Chet stayed planted on fakes, which is a good thing that he does. And I just think that Chet overall is a serious problem. And you're seeing the way that opposing players like Draymond Green talk about him as like he's going to be one of those guys, like one of the best in the league. Because we have to remember, we're saying all this, and he's playing so good that he's leading off a show where Shai scored 43, and he's played 8 NBA games. And he's played 8 NBA games off of a serious injury, like a critical injury, the Liz Frank fracture, to where this is just like a pretty baseline where it's like you would, if he was doing the opposite, you wouldn't be freaking out. You'd be wanting him to kind of get more adjusted and more used to playing NBA basketball. But this baseline is just insane for what it sets the precedent for as he gets his sea legs under him and as he gets more comfortable on the floor. It's really impressive. And I think that you saw the difference that Chet makes. We heard all training camp long about, from Wiggins to Shai to Mark to every player we talked to in training camp, just when they were talking about Chet Holmgren, because of course, going to ask about Chet Holmgren. He's the highest pick of this rebuild. He's like the guy of this rebuild draft capital wise, in terms of reputation. And everyone was excited to kind of see what he can bring to the team. So they were asked about him all off season long, and now a couple games in, asked about him again. But all the training camp long, it was completely evident to these players that he brings a different presence and just a different attitude and presence to this team. And you see the presence on both ends of the floor, because this is another game where a Chet Holmgren putback, which could not have happened on last year's roster. A Chet Holmgren putback is the exclamation point. It's the put the kids to bed play for the Thunder to get this win. 15 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, 3 blocks, 4 fouls. Now, a couple things on the fouls. Rookie big men are going to foul a lot. That's just how it is. Big men in general are going to foul a lot. It's just how it is. But Chet acknowledged what I've said before on this pod about him giving away fouls. Like there are certain fouls where, while you want to provide effort and you want to provide resistance and try to stop every shot, that's absolutely a great mentality to have. You're not going to be able to. This is a fantastic league with fantastic talent. So whenever you only get 6 fouls, you can't afford to give any of them away, because there's going to be calls where, like, you're as a shot blocker, you're going to be trying to challenge a shot, and maybe you didn't do anything wrong, but it's just in a live action, the refs are going to get calls wrong, so you're going to pick up fouls that way. So fighting for a quote unquote meaningless rebound in the grand scheme of things and getting an over the back call, doing stuff to that degree is just avoidable fouls that can help you limit foul trouble. And Chet echoed what Mark has said about what Mark tells him whenever he gets in foul trouble. Don't try to not foul, try to compete. And I think that was interesting that I brought that up to Mark, and I said, how do you balance trusting the guys, not to continue to get in foul trouble versus, what do you see in guys whenever you try to trust them? And he kind of corrected me in that way of, like, don't use the verbiage of trusting them to not foul. It's trusting them to compete hard. And if they do pick up a foul, but it was in the kind of picture of competing, that's kind of what they're looking for these players to continue to just play their way regardless of the whistle. And Chet does a really good job of that. Now, again, there's some things to clean up. He's not perfect. He's got to clean up some of these sillier fouls that he kind of just gives away to kind of negate or combat some of the ticky-tack fouls that you could get called for as a shot blocker. But in general, 8 games in, there is no way that you cannot be super excited about what Chet can bring. And there's no way that you cannot see that he is a future all-star talent. And if this is what he's doing right now, and we've already highlighted ways that the Thunder can continuously improve him based upon their play, much less his play, it's going to be a fun decade in Bricktown, watching Chet Holmgren develop and watching Chet Holmgren play. Like, this is going to be awesome. He is an absolute problem for OKC. We'll talk about SGA. We'll talk about the rest of this roster all coming up. But first, let's say right now, pretty good friends over at eBay Motors. So, folks, our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're preparing for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week We're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster, just like eBay's Guaranteed Fit. It's the eBay Guaranteed Fit fantasy players and picks of the week from Josh Lloyd. So here are the players on Josh Lloyd's lineup. You have Brandon Miller, Dylan Brooks, Bismack Biyombo, Denny Avdia, and Jordan Hawkins. We saw the Pelicans come to town last week. I like Jordan Hawkins of a guy who has unabashed confidence, and it's going to result in maybe a bad shot or two a night, but ultimately in the grand scheme of things, for a rookie to be able to try to fill it up as much as he does, and it seems like the Pelicans are going to really have him as a staple of their rotation, especially in a fantasy perspective. I would pick up Jordan Hawkins if you are able to in your league, especially as the Pelicans deal with an area of injuries. So shooting will be a huge appeal to your team and be a huge addition to your team if you add Jordan Hawkins there for fantasy basketball. Those are the fantasy picks, the guaranteed fits from Josh Lloyd. And check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball anywhere you get your podcast from, because those are going to be the perfect fits for your team, just like eBay Motors has the perfect fit for your ride. Look, whenever issues pop up with your vehicle, I'll be the first to admit, I have no idea what I'm doing. I am a novice. I'm worse than a novice. I have no idea even about windshield wipers, which ones I should buy for my vehicle. That's why I use eBay Motors, because they're going to give you this little green check that says, yep, once you put in your car information of like what kind of car you drive, what kind of year it is, they're going to match you with the guaranteed parts to fit. So that way you don't guess or don't have to try to read a manual or figure it out yourself. You just put in your make, your model, your year, and they only show you parts that can guaranteed fit in your ride. So it's great to make things easier if you're fixing up a car, if you're just trying to do some little low maintenance work, high maintenance work, whatever you're trying to do to your car, you should go to eBay Motors. They have the guarantee fit available for U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply, but check them out today to keep your ride or die car alive at ebaymotors.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. SGA had a what are you doing kind of night. What do you do kind of night for the Thunder? Like, it has to be so incredibly frustrating to play SGA, because there was nothing inherently wrong with how the Cavs were defending SGA. He's just better than you are. He's better than your defense. He's better than you at getting to his spots. And Shai mentioned after the game that like the key is having multiple spots to get to. So like you can be good at getting to your spots, but if they know where that spot is that you want to get to, it's easier for them to defend. If you have multiple spots to get to, it's of course harder to defend, and you can see that. What I thought was different about tonight's game for Shai was I thought that he was bringing the physicality to the defense. He acknowledged a couple games ago that the NBA is letting defenders play more physical in his eyes than they were last year. And I thought he did a great job of setting the tone and bringing that physicality first, because when the driver, we know that that's what Shai kind of makes his bread and butter on, is driving to the basket. When the driver initiates contact, it forces the defender to just get out of position and frees up that little scoring window, little scoring lane at the rim to get the shot off. We talk a lot about passing windows of like, you had to pass at the perfect time to fit it through the defense. It's also the same thing whenever you're shooting at the rim. You have to figure out how to generate enough space, enough of a window to get the shot off at the rim. And he did a great job tonight of getting to the rim and also bringing the physicality first, landing the first punch of the initial contact at the rim. He is elite at rejecting the screen. And part of that comes from his acceleration and deceleration, how great he is at that, because the Thunder, they use so many screens. Like every possession, there are screens. And so eventually, defenses, of course, and at this point, it's like just in the scout where they're just doing it. And when you see the scout, I mean, there is just every player listed, because they know every player is a screener and a ball handler. Every player is listed, and then they have beside it how they want to defend that player. You know, if you want to ice them, if you want to, whatever you want to do to them on the screens whenever they receive screens and give the screens, if you want to drop, whatever you want to do. And so it's fascinating to see the Thunder just screen so much that it's expected, and you're gearing up to defend it. But the reason that SGA is so elite when handling screens is because of his rejection. Whenever you set the teams up with screen, and you're worried about hedging on the screen. You're worried about picking Shai up off of the screen, blitzing Shai, trying to take the ball from Shai. As they start to shift into position and shift into that hedge or shift into that show, Shai is able to just accelerate, blow by the screen, not even use the screen, but you've already adjusted to the screen. So it's great to see what Shai can do and kind of use the tendencies of the Thunder to his advantage. It's great for SGA and for the Thunder team in general. So you kind of, it keeps you off balance and keeps you kind of allowing you to continue to be a screen heavy team, because rejecting the screen is kind of tough to do because if you're not going to play level with the screen and you try to reject the screen, the defender can just easily cut you off. Whereas with Shai, you have to play kind of level with the screen to pick him up immediately. And so he's able to just blow by you with that speed that he has. And defending Shai, you never really know what speed he does have, because he, of course, has that high end speed, of getting downhill, but he can also methodically get to the rim, which he likes to do as well. So it's just it's a tough cover for other teams. He had the steal and the slam, which was always a fun time. But the big thing here is he had a 15-point first quarter and a 15-point third quarter. And in between, he had an 8-point quarter and a 5-point quarter. Like, he's awesome. Like, he is just awesome. And you saw, too, the reason the Thunder have leaned into this everyone's a playmaker model is because when the Cavs started to double team him and try to get the ball out of his hands, he was able to make the pass to a player, many of players make the pass, and whoever he passes it to, they're not just immediately looking to return it back to Shai. How many times are you watching Luka? Are you watching these other stars that they're not playing with 4 other playmakers, to where whenever they do pass out of a double team, the recipient of the pass is kind of just sitting there waiting for another handoff to Luka to try to free him up and try to get him another go at it after he gets doubled and has to pick up his dribble. Whereas with the Thunder, that playmaker is now going to get the ball off of Shai's double, and now you're playing 4-on-3, and you're able to go have the advantage when they double team Shai. So it adds another dimension of, well, can you even double team Shai? Like, what is the answer for defending Shai? The answer is you hope that his shots aren't going in, and you hope that he's just missing, because there's not much you can do about it. But eventually, he did start getting the whistle tonight. Now, it was a tough go of it at first. I mean, there was even this huge demonstrative jumping up and down, pleading with the refs early on in this game. Like, that is so abnormal from Shai. I mean, other players do it nonstop, 82 games. Shai jumping up and down at the refs, I think, set the tone of the message from Shai, and he started getting calls after that. And in the first half, he had 3 free throw attempts and still had 25 points. Now, he ends the game with 13 free throw attempts, so that was 10 free throw attempts in the second half. That was great from him, but I wonder if we start to see it turn, because every year we see these refs come into a game with a strict point of emphasis, and then around the middle of November, all of a sudden that's out the window, and we've reverted back to our way of play. So I'm interested to see how that unfolds in Sacramento on the road on Friday. We'll talk more about that on tomorrow's podcast, but tonight, SGA, 43 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, and a block. He was seen grimacing and kind of squatting down during free throws. It was kind of awkward because he was like limping during free throws, and sometimes he wouldn't even go down to the end of the of where the free throws were happening. He was just kind of squatting there and just really like wincing. But then when the free throws were over and then the ball was in play, he looked perfectly fine. He looked great. He looked normal. He obviously scored 43 freaking points. So I don't really know. I don't really know if there's anything. It was just like kind of an interesting anecdote of what you see whenever you're there. So we'll see what happens with Shai. Of course, he dealt with that knee hyperextension last week. We'll see what it looks like here on the injury report tonight. But I think it's going to be fine with SGA because of how he didn't have it bothering him during the course of play. But anyway, Cason Wallace was awesome tonight. After the game, my good friend, my good pal, Derek Parker, InsideTheThunder.com, DraftDigest.com, DParkOK on YouTube and on Twitter, was talking to Mark. And of course, he also runs Draft Digest, so he kind of has the rookie angle covered. And he said the line, like, what do you think of Cason's big night? And Mark said, what big night? And I don't highlight that to do anything bad about Derek's question. I thought Derek had a good question. But it highlights what we picked up on this show, where you and I, the listener were talking back and forth about Cason in training camp. It was so interesting to hear that the way they talked about Cason was not coach speaky, was not just, I got asked about Cason, let me just say a line or two, just a generic line, but it was genuine praise of Cason Wallace from even SGA saying that he can play right away and he can be an impact player right away, to Kenny Hustle making the same call he made about J-Dub, to Wiggins, to Chet, to everybody on the roster that we got to talk to throughout training camp, which was everybody, praising Cason Wallace, including Mark. And Mark typically will give you an answer about a player and then try to limit your expectations and try to kind of temper things as a form of like protecting his players, I feel like, of protecting what you're supposed to expect from them. So even he, in training camp, before Cason played a single minute of NBA basketball preseason or even regular season, even he was very obviously swooning for what Cason Wallace can do. And this is a Mark kind of player. The defense, the versatility on both ends. This is a Mark kind of player. And so I believe that like that wasn't just a joke to like kind of have a lighthearted moment with DP. That was just this is just what they expect. This is just what they know that they can get from Cason Wallace and who they think that he just is, which is insane to say about a 20-year-old, but off the bench, 14 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. He was awesome. 2 for 2 in the corner, and then he missed one corner. He missed 1 3 in this game. But so far this year, he is shooting 67% on corner threes. And he starts this game out 2 for 2 from that spot. He had a self-creation step-back mid-range shot. So in this entire game, he missed 2 shots. He missed a 3, and he missed a rather out-of-control drive where there's like 10 seconds left on the shot clock. I wonder if he thought that the shot clock was lower than 10, but there's about 10 seconds left. And I think he was like aiming to get the foul, but he just didn't get the whistle. So like that, he missed 2 shots all night. He is such an efficient screener on the guard-to-guard screens because of how hard he cuts. And the threat of like, he won't slip it this time. He'll pop to 3, but he usually always does slip and go to the rim really hard. And so it allows the Thunder, to use him and to get him at the rim for an easy layup, and the patience he has at the rim to pump fake and to let the defense settle before just rushing the shot. It allows him to score efficiently as well. But to put it in perspective, how special he is for a rookie, having a run of defending Clay, Steph, Trey, Donovan Mitchell without getting embarrassed, that's special stuff. That's special stuff from a rookie defender, while also performing in his role on the offensive end. His confidence is there. It's more of a quiet confidence, but as he said, you cannot teach dog, and he has that dog in him. It's more of a quiet confidence of like, he's not going to be demonstrative. He's not going to say a ton in the interviews, but it's there, and he knows what he's doing on the floor. 14 points, 3 boards, 2 assists, 2 for 3 from 3, and only missed 1 shot inside the arc. Lu Dort's just different. And I truly believe that this is who Lu Dort is now. I asked him after the game about this role that he's found himself in, because at media day said he wanted to be more efficient. So I asked him kind of like, how have you done it? And he just said that he'd been watching film and he saw the crazy shots, and he even highlighted what I said yesterday about how he used to drive into 5 guys at the rim and it was never good. But he saw that on film, and he made the adjustments from there and kind of wanted to shift. And the mindset has shifted for Lu Dort away from taking those bad shots. And he's never had a streak like this. I mean, he's never had a streak like this of his shot, and he's not going to shoot 50% from 3. But I don't even care about the percentages. I do full-heartedly believe that he will end the season as an above-average 3-point shooter in the league, which is going to come purely by his shot diet and taking good shots. But it's obviously not going to be 50%, and doesn't have to be. It's more so the way and the process of when he's electing to shoot and when he's electing to do it. And the reason I believe that this is fully shifted is not only from what Marcus said about him to what he said about himself, but also because we've seen it already. Like there are not many variables left to do. We've seen him play with no Shai, where in years past he'd feel like he was next in line to step up as the aggressive shot taker. We've seen him play where of the starting 5, Giddey and J-Dub were not good offensively, and that leaves you, of course, just Shai, Chet, and Shai, Chet, and Dort. And Dort didn't play outside of himself. We've seen him play where guys are cooking, and so like he lets them cook. We've seen him play where he starts out 4 for 4 from three and is hitting these sidestep threes, but he doesn't let that spiral into these abhorrent heat checks or terrible drives. So like we've seen pretty much all the equations, and all of them lead back to this really efficient, different role. And so that's why I believe that like this is going to be different. And this is what we have been saying on the show, where everyone wants to kind of eject Ejectocito Dort last year, that let him play with this developed roster, and you can see a role for him where he's going to be really good. He's never shot below 40% on corner threes since his rookie season. Let him do it. Like let him play in this environment. And if he still doesn't do it then, okay, then it's time for a very serious conversation. But to this point, he has corrected and fixed the issue. And that's really great. And he put Donovan Mitchell in jail, and he had 3 blocks, 2 steals. He was a catalyst for getting a couple 24-second calls, a 5-second call late in the game for a botched inbound, 14 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Like Lou Dort has been really, really good. And another benefit too is that he mentioned that you have a group chat with like film that they put in there of clips of guys they're going to go up against, and that really helps mentor and lead Cason Wallace, who's trying to fit in that mold of a high-end defender in the league. But of course, I think that Cason will be way more advanced offensively than Dort is, and he can play a bigger role offensively than Dort can, just in his career, no matter where he ends up, no matter what the scenario or environment is around either player. Just offensively, he's more skilled than Dort, but Dort can really help him become one of these high-end point-of-attack guys. Coming up, let's talk about Josh Giddey getting benched, Davis Bertans getting some minutes, and more. But first, I want to say right now, we're good friends over at Jase Medical. So Jase Medical is sponsoring today's show. And what Jase Medical is you can order the Jase case. And so the Jase case is able to give you, these 5 life-saving antibiotics to give you that peace of mind that like you are prepared for anything that could happen, and you can and will care for your loved ones during the unexpected times. And of course, it's just always good to have these peace of mind of if anything pops up, like in the middle of the night, for example, and you just got to jump into action, you can have the Jase case available for you with 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency uses for you and your family. So it's pretty simple. All it takes for the Jase case is to fill out this simple online form. And then in some cases, you jump on a quick call with their board of certified physicians, and then you have this ongoing care from those physicians for any treatment-related questions. It is doctor-created and doctor-recommended from Jase case, so make sure you check them out today at Jase Medical. So you can avoid being unprepared, and you can empower yourself to care for you and your loved ones during anything that might pop up. And so Jase case handles everything from the online evaluations to licensed physicians and licensed pharmacy medication delivery, with ongoing consults and ongoing care for you. So check it out today at jasemedical.com. That's jasemedical.com. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Folks, Josh Giddey got benched. I don't know why that this is like a massive story in the sense of we already knew this. Like we already knew Mark was not scared to bench him. He benched Josh Giddey last year when he didn't have as many good options as he has right now at that position. Like this is not a curveball. This is not a new revelation. Mark has benched Giddey before. He's benched Lou Dort before. He's benched guys before to ride the hot hand. Tonight was no different. Josh Giddey got benched. Josh Giddey started slow last year. Josh Giddey also had incredibly highs last year, like the play-in game against the Pelicans. Like that stretch in December where he played like a rising star and he played like an all-star for that stretch in December. I think that we are overreacting to Josh Giddey's start. I think that we're overreacting to the Thunder right now. Like, this is fun. It's the best job in the world. It is awesome to cover this team and to talk about the Thunder. But we are also 8 games in. And the goal this year is to not win a championship. Like the goal this year is not a championship. The goal this year is continued development and getting to a point where you can assess this roster. And you can't assess this roster on 8 games. And so for the bad sample size that you can point out of these 8 games, the bad sample size you can point out at the start of last year, there's also sample sizes of him performing well in high-stake games, like that play-in game against New Orleans, like that stretch in December, January, which was the catalyst to get the Thunder to the play-in. Because remember, the Thunder as a whole stumbled out of the gates. Sam Presti admits himself the Thunder had 2 good months all year long, and that's why they ended up below 500, but that's how they got into the play-in. Whereas, like, at the end of the season, too, it wasn't as though the Thunder were just, like, massively clicking. They dropped games to the Pistons. They dropped games to the Hornets. They dropped games to Indiana whenever Indiana was folding it in. They dropped these games where they should have won down the stretch. So we've seen it all from Josh Giddey, and we've also seen that he's a notorious slow starter. Now, at the end of the season, there's going to be conversations, of course, about how to build this roster, what the next steps are, what this team needs to add, what this team needs to do. But I think here and now, it's a bit of an overreaction. And I think that, like, to be shocked or to be stunned with Mark benching Josh Giddey is a bit silly because, as I've been saying all offseason long, the Thunder have the benefit of this depth and the benefit of a coach who will use the depth. Most coaches get stuck in their way and they want to just use their same guys no matter the situation, no matter the circumstances. Mark is not afraid to play 10, 11, 12, 15 guys a night to where if Josh or Lou or any of these guys don't have it, they're not going to play. And you can find people who can play that night and who do have it that night. And that's why I think the Thunder will be so successful in the regular season. I find it hard to believe that most nights you can't find guys who have it because this the roster is so talent rich. If it's not Josh, then it's going to be someone else. If it's not Dub, it's going to be somebody else. It's going to be somebody to step up. And so, yes, he got benched. Yes, he's playing very bad right now in the sense of like the results. But I thought the last 2 games, the decision-making was there. The decision-making was better. The process was better. The shots aren't going in. Now, whenever you are playing bad for the last, let's see, what is 8 minus 2, folks? 6. You're playing bad for the last 6 games, and then the last 2 games, you had a really good process but didn't score the ball well. It feels like it's all just piling on and condensing against you. And you can see some of that frustration from him on the court. But I think that in general, the last 2 nights were a more so product of the shots didn't fall into the rim and they kind of rimmed out versus he's just a terrible player who can't really do anything and can't thrive in the NBA. But the good thing about the Thunder is they have guys who can fill in for Josh Giddey, Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe. There's going to be a night where Isaiah Joe, who didn't particularly shoot the ball well tonight, by the way, but he did other things very well. Credit to Isaiah Joe. But there's going to be nights where Isaiah Joe doesn't have it and where a rookie Cason doesn't have it, but Josh Giddey is working very well. It's going to be trade-offs. And it goes back to the overreaction portion of, right now is the heightened portion of when fans are going to be watching the games, if Bally Sports actually works, for the start of the season. And you're living and dying with every single bucket, every single play. Whereas, like, if we had a larger sample size, let's say that Josh started out with a blazing anomaly, like 10-game stretch where he's just fantastic. And then in January, he played like this for 8 games. It would not even be remotely close to as big of a deal. So it's kind of like picking your spot. Same thing with Isaiah Joe. Of like Isaiah Joe has started out shooting the ball, slower than he did last year. But last year he also had a month where he shot, terribly from 3 for his standards of like as a sharpshooter, of course, not like terribly in the grand scheme of things. But since it was hidden and you had a larger sample size, that's how averages work. He still averaged incredible from 3 last year for the Thunder and was great for OKC. But he had those months where he dipped. Like, for example, with Isaiah Joe, 60% from 3 in October, 41% from 3 in November. And then he started clicking 45%, 43%, 47% the next 3 months. And then 51% in February. In March, he shot 31%. But like that March stretch where it was 17 games where he shot 31% was masqueraded by the 70, 40, by the 60, 40, 45, 43, 47, 40, right? It was in between there. So let's just let this play out a little bit. I am not saying that Josh is playing perfect or he's playing great or that he shouldn't be questioned. I'm just saying let's let it play out just a little bit more before we start saying stuff like, oh, he's terrible. Oh, they've got to move on from him. if you believe he's terrible, by the way, if you believe he's just awful and not a good player, and you also believe they should trade him, who's going to give up anything for a terrible player? Like, it can't be both things of like he's terrible, but then go trade him for an incredible player. So let's just relax and let this play out. Now, end of the season wise, after we have an 82 game stretch of data and how this team plays with and without Josh Giddey and how these young players progressed, how he progressed or didn't progress, we can start to have a different conversation of what to do. But in that course of those 82 games, you're also going to see the Thunder make adjustments. And the adjustments are not going to come from trading Josh Giddey or making earth-shattering moves. I do not expect the Thunder within the course of these 82 games, to make anything even remotely close to a noteworthy trade. I would expect them to make adjustments in-house of like, you might start to see Josh Giddey start, but he comes out at the 2 or 3 minutes into the first, and then he gets to run the show for the second unit, which helps maximize his game and helps maximize the bench and helps maximize everyone involved to put him in a better spot to succeed. So like, after an 82 game season with a head coach who is going to work and going to try to find ways to maximize his talent, if it still is not maximized, then we're going to spend all summer long talking about Josh Giddey, talking about the roster, talking about how to improve it, talking about whatever drama pops up in the offseason of stars demanding a trade, which is going to happen every year in the NBA. Talking about the draft, of course, where the Thunder are going to own 1 billion draft picks, but let's not do it after 8 games. Let's not do it after 8 games and make these rash decisions off of it. So the Thunder did play Davis Bertans in this game. They did a great job of finding matchups for him to benefit him of trading off how bad he is defensively, but wanting to steal some minutes. They did a great job for him at the beginning of matching him with Dean Wade, because Dean Wade is a more stationary player at the three-point line, and that's by design, because Davis, despite his best efforts, and you have to give him credit, he's not a bad defender because he doesn't try. He tries his butt off, but he's just not good at defense. And so it was a great idea to try to steal some minutes. He just so happened to not shoot the ball well from 3. Davis didn't. And then Cleveland started putting him in actions where they just could expose him. I mean, even Niang went through his chest in this game. But he tries on D, man. And you saw it on the inbound deflection where he's just jumping up and down and trying his hardest to go crazy and get the deflection, and did. And he goes out there and gets the transition bucket for OKC. But ultimately, it's bad defensively. And whenever you're trying to steal 4 or 5 minutes from him, if he's also not lighting up from 3, it's just kind of minutes at best and below average minutes at worst, where you see kind of the process here, right? If you ask yourself during these games, why isn't Davis playing? Well, look at the floor, right? Look at who is playing, and not who's playing for the Thunder. Look who's playing for the other team. Is there a Davis Bertans guy that just kind of stands there? I mean, Dean Wade kind of guy who just kind of stands there, because each game that Davis has played for OKC, he's shared the floor with a counterpart who just stands there, and doesn't really do anything movement-wise, to where it makes it so much easier to hide him defensively. You saw it against the Pistons, whenever he got those 12 minutes against the Pistons. Like they had Joe Harris, I believe it was, that was just his matchup, and he just kind of sat there at the three-point line and waited for his chance. Yeah, Joe Harris had 10 minutes, and they kind of mirrored each other, where Joe Harris was just kind of stationary, waiting for a kick out. Well, if that's all you're going to do, then even Davis, who's a known bad defender, he can do that. He can just stand there in the corner and put his arms up as a big man and contest a three-point shot. And so you've got to find matchups that can work for him on that end of the floor. Now, other teams can start to bring him into action and pick on him, which they tried to do against Cleveland today. But in general, you have to applaud his professionalism and his non-wavering confidence. And I asked Mark about why he played Davis in this game, kind of if it was something that he saw in the matchups. And he used that to kind of spin off and riff on giving credit to all the guys who aren't playing right now for the work that we don't see that they put in to stay prepared. And he said that he used kind of Davis as like an example, so to say, of like, your number is going to get called, but you better be ready when it is. And he knew that Davis would be ready and would play his butt off and would, even after getting a huge string of DNPs, would actually give high level effort and give everything he had. And so like, that's an example to the young guys who aren't playing right now. Trey, Poku, like all these guys who aren't playing right now. It's an example of, hey, this is a NBA vet who's played on many teams, and he's played in many different roles. And many organizations, and he is staying prepared and he is staying ready. And I just love the professionalism from Davis Bertans. I mean, and it's great to see, especially after some whispers in the offseason from other teams of what to expect in this scenario. And it's awesome to see his professionalism too, because I think that at times we forget that like these players are human in the sense of if we know something, they know something. Like if we know the Thunder are a roster that is designed to not play Bertans, he knows that too. He knows that the Thunder are not going to play him, and they're going to force him to miss at least 20-something games to make sure he doesn't hit that 75% mark, to not let that affect how you play whenever you do get a chance to play, or how you show up to work, or how you are a teammate is great. Like Trey Mann, Davis Bertans, whenever you're watching them at practice and shoot around and in games, they are such great teammates. Whenever some guys would be jaded a little bit by not playing, and then these guys are great. So they do deserve a little round of applause for that. J-Dub also deserves a round of applause. My biggest takeaway from J-Dub's game today was that he is so good at playing independent of a box score and a stat sheet. Like, even as a guy who loves the press clippings and loves the social media stuff, he goes 1 for 4 in the first half. And instead of like pressing or hunting a shot or wanting to fix it or pouting or whatever, in the second half, he goes 4 for 6. He plays his style of basketball no matter what's happening. You saw that in the first Cleveland game where he was bad for 3 quarters offensively, outright bad. In the fourth quarter, he turned it on and helped the Thunder win and helped the Thunder get that comeback. So his ability to just fight through stuff like that is impressive for a second-year guy. 15 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, 50% shooting, 1 for 1 from 3, 4 for 4 from the line. I thought that Jang played well. Joe played well as well. The Thunder, just as a quick note, have to start the quarters better, and they do deserve credit for learning from last Wednesday against the Pelicans. Since that game where they blew that 22-point lead and lost, they've had 2 more big leads, and they've won both of them while staving off a comeback. So it's great to see that course correction. But tomorrow, we're going to do your mailbag podcast. Saturday, we're going to do a Kings recap. Monday, a Suns recap, and we'll just continue to roll along here on Locked On Thunder. Make sure you subscribe anywhere you get your podcast from, including on YouTube. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.